and government in particular. And we all listen to the account that is given by the head of state in terms of what would have gone on in the previous 12 months. I think we have to say that this day, tomorrow, will mark the beginning of a substantive parliamentary program for 2017. We will have our own colleagues with whom we had a special meeting yesterday, and that is the speakers of the 9 provincial legislatures. The 2017 SONA will be the 10th by President Jacob Zuma in his capacity as head of state. And among things he will reflect on, he will table a program of action for the year and account for progress made since the previous commitments in February 2016. So we really are just here to say to you, we have satisfied ourselves, having received reports from the Secretary and his team about the state of readiness. We are satisfied that all measures have been taken to make sure that we run a successful event on the 9th of February. Which will be an official and formal beginning to what will probably be one of the most exciting years for us as South Africans. So it's all systems go. And we've done as thorough a briefing, a planning as we could do. We know that there's been a bit of excitement about 1 or 2 matters, including issues relating to the deployment of the South African National Defence Force. We hope that you will have by now seen our statement that was attempting to clarify and make sure there's no confusion about members of the Defence Force, that we are not going to see many or hundreds of Defence Force members milling around the precincts of Parliament. No. Those people will not be anywhere around Parliament, and they simply are allowed to be wherever they ought to be as soldiers in places we never really are worried or even conscious of as Parliament, because where we focus is the events within the precinct, within the House. So where they will be, we don't know. We are not really involved in those issues. So the impression that had earlier been created that they would be descending on Parliament, we wish to clarify, is really a wrong impression. So I think with those introductory remarks, that is our account and our report, and we are ready, if you so wish, to entertain questions of clarification from members of the media. Thank you very much, unless my colleagues would like to add something. Not you. Not you.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Let's open the platform for members of the media to raise questions. Noted, yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks, Madam Speaker. It's Gay Davis from Eyewitness News. I just wanted to ask whether the Speaker and the Chairperson of the NCOP were aware or made aware by the President or the Presidency of the deployment of the 441 soldiers. I understand that they won't be deployed within the precinct, but they'll be deployed outside. It is a much larger number than has been deployed before. And have you been able to get clarity on the information from the Presidency, which said that they would be used to maintain law and order in cooperation with the SAPS, when previously the employment has always just referred to cooperation with the SAPS? So it was the first time that we saw the words law and order and the maintenance of it being referred to, which might have contributed to things. Thanks. I'll leave it there for now.
Good afternoon, Marianne Merton, Daily Maverick. In connection with the statement that the ANC's Zizi Kotwa put out in your name as ANC chairperson, a national chairperson, the Speaker's Ball, you are quoted in that statement to say that this is a private matter. Can you confirm that you yourself will be paying for it? If not, who is paying for it? Are there sponsors? Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. And Jeanette?
Hi, Madam Speaker. Janet Hurd from Media 24. Two issues. The one is one of the other issues that have been burning besides the SANDF has been the issue of media restrictions. So sorry to raise this again, once again. It's been the issue since the first briefing that has been held. And still we feel that we haven't really sort of been going around in circles, to put it mildly. Can you just give us a feedback? In fact, this is actually addressed to the Secretary, Mr. Mgitlana. He said he would report back to us about feedback from the police with regard to the discussions that took place yesterday with the PGA and a member of SANEF, myself actually, for full disclosure. So we're just interested what has developed there with those issues, and besides the other issues. So, you know, we're obviously very curious to see what the outcome of all that is, seeing as SONA is happening tomorrow. Yeah, that is my main question at the moment. But if you could also just comment on what you see as unfair or freedom of movement for journalists tomorrow. Thank you. In light of the discussions with the security units. Bye.
Okay. We will take the last one, and then go for answers from our leadership.
Okay, my name is Budelani from SABC. I just want to get a sense from you, Speaker, whether, you know, given the history of the sittings of the House when the President comes, one, are you anticipating any similar incidents that we've seen in the past tomorrow? And secondly, what kind of measures are there in place if those eventualities do take place? Thanks.
We will have the first round of answers from our leadership, and after that, we'll take another round. Over to you, POs.
My first response is I will start with the media, and the Secretary will add there. As far as we are concerned, the media will be allowed freedom of movement, as is usually the case. The Secretary would have met, as we understand, to clarify this question of restrictions and so on, because the idea is that we expect that the media be allowed to continue to operate in the manner in which they have operated before. And the other is that the President responded to a request by the police and can only deploy on being requested by the police to support them in case they need any help. And so he has, on receiving such request, to notify Parliament if he agrees with the police. And having received that notification, that has been, as is required by the law, 80 seat presented in the announcement tablings in Parliament, so that every Parliament itself is notified, its members have it on record that this is the reason given by the President to do that, that he is requested by the police to support them to use a phrase that has created a lot of problems, law and order, meaning basically maintaining support in the event, given the nature of things that might be happening around outside and so on, so that Parliament knows he does that. Now, this is what, as one of you said, that it's not the first time. So that's the notification we received, and it's been tabled because we can't not do that. We have to notify Parliament, members of Parliament, in fact, once we receive such a notice from the President. The other mem is yours.
Are we anticipating any, that was the question from Bulilan, any out of the way behavior, and what are the measures? Did I capture your question well? Well, we are hoping that tomorrow's proceedings will go according to plan. We have, however, been getting notice via the media that the President will be interrupted. We do have the rules of procedure that we will follow. We are hoping that all members of Parliament will remember and respect the rules, and that it will not require us to take any extraordinary measures against members. However, those of us who will be presiding tomorrow are determined that the business of the House, of the joint sitting, will start and finish. That's as far as I can take it, Speaker.
Thank you very much for the questions. I do confirm what the colleagues have said, both the Deputy Speaker and the Chairperson, on the questions that they've responded to. And the only question, therefore, that remains for me to address relates to the Speaker's ball, and I will be very simple and direct. It is not the first time that we are having this Speaker's ball. It is indeed a private matter. It does not utilize a single cent from Parliament. If you will remember, I think we started not to have dinner paid for by Parliament in recent years, and so room opened up for other ways of spending time with colleagues and friends and guests. Hence, the Speaker's ball started to move into the space, and indeed it is a privately arranged event. Thank you.
Thank you, Pius. Let's take another round. I've noted you. Number 2. Any other one? Jeanette? And yeah, 4 questions. Any 5th one, person? Okay. Let's go in that order. Thanks.
Thank you, Speaker. Babalo here from the Sunday Times. Towards the end of last year, President Zuma said inside the chamber that you, or the presiding officers, were not doing enough to protect him from abuse. Will you ensure this year that the president will not have any reason to make such a statement? Will he be adequately protected from whatever disruptions that or abuse that he was referring to? In 2000, and just secondly, that's the first question, Speaker. Just in 2013, there were 168 SANDF members deployed or employed. I'm not sure what the correct terminology is. In 2015, 188, so it was 20 more. This year, it's 441, almost tripled in number since this current parliament that we are in. Is there any reason for that increase in number? We understand the ceremonial duties that the SANDF provides. They line the streets and they play the brass band, that we all know. Because the chief whip of the ANC told us earlier now today that the wording in that letter from the president is the problem. That's what's problematic and is basically leading to all of this law and order. In previous years, that wording was not used. In fact, last year, there's no ATC record of deployment or employment of SANDF members. We've looked, we can't find it. I've only got these years that I've quoted now. What's the difference this time around, Speaker, that we need such a bigger number of, and the wording in that statement that seems to have bothered the ANC chief whip? He wants it corrected, actually. Is that worth something that is worth your consideration, or can it be corrected to allay fears, the media and whoever else is concerned? Thank you.
Let's take it to Lulama.
Lulama Matya, SABC. Speaker, when you hear that, it's a follow-up actually on the deployment of these 441 SANDF members. When you hear that so many soldiers are going to be deployed, doesn't that concerns you? Because even if they are deployed outside parliamentary precinct, the day is about SONA and it's about opening of parliament. Aren't you concerned when you hear those deployments? And secondly, has there ever been a situation whereby you feel as the presiding officers of parliament that there's lawlessness and unorder that is happening when during SONA? And thirdly, if you can just respond on allegations made by, if there are allegations made by EFF saying that they have written to you asking you that tomorrow shouldn't be about the State of the Nation address. It should rather be a discussion on how Parliament has defied the Constitution. Has there been any letter from them writing to you saying that tomorrow shouldn't be about SONA, but about Parliament discussing how they are defying the Constitution?
Okay, then we go to Janet.
Thanks. I'm going back to the media issue. I would like to know what, we've got the guidelines now. You mentioned that media, only accredited media are allowed to go into designated areas. There's also a map. Can you just spell out exactly what that designated area is? And secondly, I would like to know on a very practical level, say I am confronted by a member of a security unit, bearing in mind you've said we have freedom of movement, etc. What do we do in an event tomorrow that we get stymied by someone who tries to block us and tell us to pull back and not go into a certain area or blocks us? What is a plan of action that we can do to get a surety from Parliament, bearing in mind what has been said here over and over again, assuring us what the practicality on the ground is often very different because security officers do their own thing. So we need to know that Parliament has our backs here and will support us. Thank you.
Hello, Jan Gerber, Media 24. I also have a question on the army issue. As presiding officers of Parliament, are you satisfied that the question of the separation of powers have not been breached by the Parliament ordering the deployment of the SANDF? And also as the presiding officers of what should be the People's Parliament, how do you feel that it's necessary to employ the army? I mean, what message does it send out to the people of South Africa? Thanks.
Hi, just a quick follow-up. I really just wanted to know whether the Speaker is paying out of her own pockets for the Speaker's Ball or whether sponsors have been organized. On the other level, in line with previous questions, the presiding officers by law are the authority of everything in the parliamentary precinct. And I think it's clause 4 that says the presiding officers must give express authority for security services to be anywhere in the precinct. The one exception, of course, being a life-threatening situation. Would the presiding officers please confirm the numbers of SAPS, SANDF, state security agents, and any other member of the security forces that you have given permission to be on the parliamentary precinct tomorrow? Thank you.
Now we have, can we take another round? Because I think there's quite a lot of questions that have been raised already. We'll come back to you, Paul and Gay. Thanks. Can I just raise something that the purpose of today's media conference is to look at the state of preparedness for tomorrow. And there are other mechanisms for managing issues that are at the personal level affecting some of our leaders. And therefore, may I request that we refrain from engaging those. Otherwise, there are media liaison officers and ourselves who can facilitate that outside of this formal media conference. Thank you. Over to you.
I want to get to the, I think it's Babalu's question, whether the POs were doing enough to protect the president after he complained. When we preside, we are guided by the rules which are agreed to by both houses and the joint houses, which protects equally all the members in the House equally. In other words, if a member uses language unbecoming, it does not matter who it is, we will call that member to order. If any conduct is unbecoming, we will deal with that behavior, irrespective of who it is. So using these rules of the houses, we protect the president in as much as we protect the backbencher. So I do think that we have done what we could under the circumstances to do what the rules of the two houses and the joint house permit us to do. But you will also be aware that the National Assembly has had to revisit their rules. We are doing the same, because some of the things which started occurring in Parliament, we had never had the disruptions that we started experiencing since 2014 in Parliament. So our rules had not anticipated certain behaviors. And that is why we have had to come back to reviewing the whole issue about the decorum of the houses and taking measures to protect the houses and its integrity. You are also saying that since 2013, the numbers have been increasing. It is true, 2013, 168, 2 years later, 188, and then in 2017, 441. You say that the wording is different. In fact, if you look at the wording of the 2013, it refers to combat crime and maintain and preserve the law. In 2017, it says to maintain law and order. If you are in the security sector, that you would know that, in fact, if you simplify the language, they mean exactly the same thing. Now, the president is required when he deploys to inform Parliament. Whether they come to Parliament or they don't come to Parliament, is required by the law to inform Parliament, because Parliament does have a say in how the members of the Defence Force of South Africa are deployed. And that is why he does it. The fact that this year there is 441, Parliament cannot explain the difference between why he chose in 2013 to deploy 168 and now 441. Earlier on in our meeting with the chief whips of different parties, we undertook to find out why the numbers have grown, because we ourselves cannot explain. We do not want to speculate and give reasons for things that tomorrow you will say we misled you on. You say that, are we not worried that the separation of powers has been breached? No, we're not, because we have said that any use of any authority within the precincts of Parliament will be under the direction of the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Chairperson of the NCOP. So far, we have not given any instruction for police to run amok in the precinct of Parliament. We have not given any instruction for members of, what is that element? The defense, and there's another one. SSA. We have not given any instruction. Now, if you are referring to the preparatory meetings that usually take place as we prepare for the State of the Nation address annually, yes, we have been quite open about the fact that when we prepare for the State of the Nation, when we prepare to host any head of state, foreign head of state, when we prepare for any extraordinary measure, that all those agents, the military, the police, and the Secret Service might be under one roof to make sure that nothing goes wrong. That does not mean that we brook or we encourage any breach of the separation of powers. So tomorrow, if and when we need to bring any of the state security, it will be under the direction of either or both of us asking for and giving the instruction. It would be a different matter if you said we will sit back and allow the Minister of Police or the President to then run the precinct of Parliament. We don't think that will happen. So we are not worried at all about any breach of the separation of powers. We guard it jealously. We want to maintain the People's Parliament. We also want to ensure that the rights of the communities and the private citizens are respected to come to Parliament, to bring their issues, and therefore we will continue to guard that space very jealously.
The program of Parliament is agreed to and organized by via the Chief Whips Forum and to the programming. So the day is decided collectively and organized that way. So a request from any one party to change the program requires it to be done in the programming committee and debated there. And if this one has been finalized, tomorrow's purposes is not to discuss the program. That's a programming question. So it will be irrelevant in the first place and not appropriate to raise it there, because the reason for tomorrow's meeting is expressly communicated to all the parties who agreed to it anyway. They may not have agreed to it, but the important thing is that the decisions of the House and its program are agreed to by the majority of the political parties in the House, which has happened in this instance. So that would be my response to that issue, that please let's remember that it is the majority of political parties who decides the program. And the State of the Nation address day itself is not a day to debate programming, quite frankly. And so I would imagine that they would have received that response. But I also want to add to the question of the separation.
Can I interject on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Before you finalize?
Yes, yes.
I think the role of the president must be understood on the state of the nation. He does not just play the role of being the head of the executive on that day. The State of the Nation address is called in his capacity as the head of state. In other words, the head of all the three arms of the state, which is why all of us gather under one roof. It is also an account he gives to the whole nation on what he has said in the past and on what he undertakes. He writes to us. I do not think, in fact, there is provision to either the Speaker or the Chairperson of the NCOP to say, no, we don't think we want the State of the Nation. It is an imperative. We agree on the date. I want to emphasize, it is his agenda. We agree that there is no other item on the agenda of that day but the address of the President. So it would be inappropriate for any member to change that. And I just wanted to say that Deputy Speaker is right. Any other matter is a subject of the programming in both houses, and members in the different houses can go to the programming. Now, the State of the Nation can also not be bogged down by the issues which are raised by the National Assembly, because they're not sitting alone. We, the National Council of Provinces, are also there. It's a joint sitting and therefore cannot be reduced to the issues which apply only to one house. And therefore, that would be, again, another point where the other house that comes in would say, don't bog us down. When you are left alone, National Assembly, you can sort your stories out. But at the joint sitting, we want the State of the Nation address.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think that was appropriate. The Constitution speaks of the interdependence, interconnectedness of the different spheres of government. But the same principle applies to the three different arms. And this is why it also talks of cooperative governance. So in events such as the one we're talking about, this is one of the examples during which all parts of the state comes together in a practical expression of that interdependency, interconnectedness, yet the distinctness of the various parts of the state. And so even in its planning, execution, and follow-up, the same cooperative relations are expected. And so this is what happens. The separation of powers, there are boundaries that are managed that each of the arms of the state must deal with. The courts will say, we find that there is a problem in this legislation as has been brought to our attention, but it is not for us to make that piece of legislation correct. The legislature will sort it out. They will be given 18 months, for example, so that they determine what the law will say and so on. The courts interpret the law. This is why they'll say, no, in this instance, Parliament was justified in using its rules because otherwise the disruption would prevent its business from not taking place. So that respect is expressed that way and understood in the separation of powers. The involvement of the army, the police, the security services as a cluster as a whole is part of that expression and so on. They do not run the affairs during our sittings. That's the presiding officer's responsibility and so on, and the boundaries have been explained and clarified as has been indicated here. Thanks.
Thank you very much. On the movement of the media, I think that has been explained in addition to what had already been conveyed through interaction with the Secretary to Parliament, that we do not anticipate media personnel to be stopped all over the place and harassment of media, of journalists in them executing their job. We really don't expect that at all, because it indeed is a normal process that all of us gather here and we each play our roles in the usual ways. And therefore, it's not, in fact, even in the interests of Parliament for journalists to be, to feel that they are accosted or they are stopped from moving around in the usual manner, you know, in order for them to do their job. Yes, I did receive correspondence from the EFF, and I responded to it. I've become aware today, maybe 2 hours ago, that there's further correspondence which is being attended to as we speak. Just to add on the protection of the president, I think I want to underline what the chairperson is saying, and to say that indeed we will continuously leave no stone unturned in ensuring that everything is done for the decorum of the House of Parliament to be respected, in order that all of us must deliver to the mandate given by the people of South Africa. And so from our side as presiding officers, we will utilize all the rules and make sure that we maintain the decorum in order that Parliament can do its job. I think we've covered all the questions.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I'm only taking 2 hands that I closed after acknowledging or recognizing them.
Sorry, I don't think the question on the numbers regarding to
No,
SABC
remember,
was
I
answered.
said that matter, we're going to take it on a bilateral basis, aside. Or the SABC.
I had asked a question in terms of the appropriate law on the express permission required by the presiding officers. What express permission have the presiding officers given in terms of numbers of SAPs, numbers of defense, numbers of SSA people to be allowed to be operating on this permit that the presiding officers are by law exclusively in charge of? Thank you.
Such a question would require that you pose it to the members who exercise executive authority over the various groupings of security forces that you are mentioning. Here in Parliament, we've got the Parliamentary Protection Services. We do have the regular members of the South African police forces that work around the precinct. So there is nothing else that has been agreed to by us. We've been informed by the President of the members of the South African National Defence Force who are going to be in the appropriate places, awaiting an occasion should there be a need for them to come and support the South African police services. And things will proceed as they usually do. And we never even really get conscious of the presence anywhere around of the members of the South African National Defence Force. And so we expect that tomorrow things will go on as normal. And somebody asked the question of whether there was ever any need, in our view, that perhaps there be members of the security forces. And I do want to say that there was a year, if it's not last year, it was the year before, when outside the precincts of Parliament, there were physical fights, including stabbings of people out there. So we really don't know, and we're not observers in those incidents, but we know that there were acts of criminality outside the precincts of Parliament. And I'm quite sure that those that considered the capacity needed to make sure that any eventuality can be managed would have taken into account such previous events and the potential of similar complications coming about, and saying that there ought to be people with appropriate skills to assist.
Thank you, Speaker. We are only taking the last three that I've noted now, because Babalo has also raised a hand. We're taking Paul and Gay and Babalo.
Good evening, Speaker and Chairperson. Paul Vecchiato from Bloomberg and Secretary of the Parliamentary Press Gallery Association. Just to go back to media freedom, and first of all, I welcome the statement that journalists will be able to move freely. But just to get a little bit of specific clarity, can you assure us that we'll have free access to our offices in 100 Plain Street and Marks Building in particular, before, during, and after the State of the Nation address? And then just something to touch on the Speaker's ball, and it's just an understanding of what happens after SONA, if you don't mind. The President will be going to address the People's Assembly down in Grand Parade as soon as he's finished the speech. I just want to understand, will he also be making an appearance at the ball? From what I heard from last year, a lot of your guests were really impressed by your hospitality there. And then secondly, will you and the chairperson also be making an appearance at Grand Parade for the People's Assembly? Thank you.
Thanks, it's Gay here again. Madam Chairperson, I just wanted to be sure that I heard correctly, because you said that the President was here not just as the President of the country, but as the head of all three arms of the state. I heard correctly, did I? But he's not head of all three arms of state. He's head of the executive. Is that not right? He's President of the country, but he's not the head of all three arms of state. Okay, I'll just move on from that. The other question that I just wanted to ask you is, are you satisfied that all the legal requirements relating to the deployment of the SANDF members were met? I noticed that we've got the ATC today, but the deployment was since Sunday the 5th. And there's a question mark over whether it was gazetted in terms of the Defence Act. I don't know whether that was there. If you could confirm that those I's were dotted and T's were crossed, and that you you're completely satisfied. Thanks. Bye.
Babalo is the last one. Oh, gone. Okay, thank you. Presiding officers.
All the legal requirements for the deployment of SAPs. When we get notification, when the president signs off a letter, it doesn't automatically mean that we are going to receive the letter on that date. And when we ATC as soon as it is possible. Now, if the letter comes to Parliament during the weekend, the ATC machinery is not there. So you would wait for the next available date so that you can then ATC. And I think that is what happened, because I only became aware of the letter the president has sent to my office over the weekend. There's no way we could have ATC'd over the weekend. So we did it within the reasonable time that we could do it. Again, I suspect the issues about access of journalists to their offices seems a little bit strange for me, but I think the secretary might be able to clarify this. It should be natural that journalists would have access to their offices without any hindrance. And perhaps it is because I do not understand what is really at issue. Whether, in fact, you are saying that Parliament is so restricting your movements that we are saying you cannot go to your offices. And if that is the case, then we want to before but apologize to the Speaker, because that is not the intention. What we would want is a media which feels comfortable to report without fear or favor, which reflects and educates. That is what we would want to see. Parliament has absolutely no appetite to intimidate or to prohibit people from doing their ordinary business. That is not our intention. Speaker, about the ball, I don't know. I do know that I certainly would not mind going to the Speaker's ball. We will be tired. It will be time to drink something and to listen to good music, and I certainly will avail myself to that. Will I be able to do the parade and the Speaker's ball? I don't know. I have to decide which one comes first. But I can tell you that it is not I don't think we are forced to make the choices. I am not sure whether if the Speaker has invited the President or the President invites himself. He goes with a big contingent. If the contingent says it is fine for him to address and then come and join the Speaker at the ball, there shouldn't be any issue about it, actually. A ball is a ball. It's people coming together, eating something, and then going home.
Depends. The access to offices has been answered. Surely can be an issue. On the president being the head of the national executive, the constitution actually says he's a head of state, which includes the three arms. The state includes the three arms. So his role includes that role, and then also the head of this one, the executive. So he's both the head of the national executive as well as the whole state. That includes all three arms. So I think those are the only issues that still needed to be addressed.
I think at this point we should thank everybody else who has been here, and we thank the leadership, and we're also hoping that whether directly or indirectly, we'll find ourselves into the ball of the Speaker.
All right, that was live from Parliament. Parliament's briefing on its state of readiness ahead of the State of Nation address that's coming to you live tomorrow night. And of course, officials there facing a barrage of questions from journalists following reports that their movement, which is unusual for Parliament, will be restricted to certain areas. We take a short break, back with the business news after that.
Ever wondered what the State of the Nation address is? Well, wonder no more, because SABC News will bring you live coverage of the pomp and ceremony from Parliament. We'll focus on the people's expectations and, of course, President Jacob Zuma's address. We'll catch all of this live on SABC2, Channel 404, and your favorite radio station on the 9th of February.
Very good evening to you. It's just gone 6 o'clock Central African time. You're with SABC News Prime Time, coming to you live from Johannesburg. I'm Francis Hurd. Peter is out tonight. Let's look at the headlines for this hour. Widespread condemnation from opposition parties and civil society as government plays down the deployment of soldiers to the State of the Nation address in Parliament tomorrow. A groundbreaking minimum wage at 20 Rand an hour is signed by all interested parties except COSATU, still consulting with its members. The case surrounding the deaths of 94 psychiatric patients moved from Esidimeni Life Healthcare Centre is now heading to the courts. Well, of course, tomorrow marks President Jacob Zuma's 8th State of the Nation address. It signals the opening of Parliament, and there will be the usual pomp and ceremony. It usually sets out government's program and policies for the year ahead. A presidential statement yesterday indicated that more than 440 soldiers would be deployed to protect Parliament. This led to a storm of fury, with one commentator labelling it as an assault on democracy. Well, today the Defence Minister dismissed the claims as unfounded and said the South African National Defence Force would only be on standby in the event that they were required. The Gauteng Health Department head of department has been placed on suspension. This follows the deaths of 94 psychiatric patients in the province who were moved from Life Esidimeni Healthcare Centre last year. This is part of the recommendations made by the Health Ombudsman as a precautionary measure for him to be suspended and his role in the deaths to be investigated. Bani Selobane was appointed as head of the Department of Health last year. He has held various senior positions in both the public and private sectors. His suspension follows the resignation of Health MEC Edani Mahlangu, who stepped down in the wake of the Ombudsman's report. The report has called for disciplinary action against a few senior officials. Dr. Ernest Kenoshi will act as HOD pending the outcome of a disciplinary hearing.
Following the report of the Health Ombudsman or the recommendations of the Health Ombudsman,